quickly introduce myself. My name is Xin. I'm in product management because my product actually manages cloud native environment. I'm different. We started work on Kubernetes monitoring, and I'm definitely interested to learn more about service mesh because that seems to be the next hot thing. And then how do we leverage that to manage the containerized application and microservices is something I want to learn. Thank you.
Awesome. So where are you? Where are you tuning in from? Where are you joining from?
I'm in San Jose.
Oh, awesome. I was just in San Jose last week.
Yeah. You always have this meetup like online? Because I know there are some local South Bay meetups in person.
So the last meetup we actually hosted was on site here in Dallas. We haven't actually done anyone in San Jose, but we had one in Santa Clara last.
That's very close. That's very close.
Yes, Oracle's campus. Yes, we had one there. But the plan is we have a couple of things we plan on introducing.
I see.
On site presence. So
are you guys have used Istio already? I know that it's only reached version 1, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I've used Istio. Right now, we don't have Istio in production, but we have it in a staging environment, right? Well, I'm going to go into the details during the meetup, the meeting rather, to explain, the reason why it was pulled from production, some of the things that we saw, so you will get from discussion, you will see some of the logic, the reason why, we pulled it from the production or why some people have it in production. So those things we are going to go into them during the meeting. Yes. But we do have in our staging environment.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, so for those who just joined, again, feel free to introduce yourself. We're kind of like introducing each other before the meetup starts in the next 5 minutes. So feel free to kind of like give a brief introduction on why you're joining, what you plan on learning today about, Istio and traffic mesh, or maybe your background if you've used any kind of traffic mesh in the past,
So, hey, this is Salim. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, yeah. I can hear you, Salim. Hi.
Hey, just wanted to learn it, and this was a great format. Thank you for doing this. So, haven't used it in the past, but I've seen it. I've seen it in another meetup, and looked really interesting. But this is really nice and close, so I can sit on my desk and watch this. So this is great. So thank you for doing this.
Awesome.
Yeah, this is great.
Where are you joining from, Salim?
Denver, Colorado.
Awesome.
Yeah. Where are you guys at?
I am in Dallas, Texas. Also, Tunde is also in Dallas, Texas. Also,
the best in America.
Yeah. You guys are awesome. That's great. Thanks for doing this. You should do more. You should do these more often. This is great. This is awesome.
Awesome.
I'm gonna shut down my video, but I'm here watching you guys. Okay.
Awesome.
All right.
I was going to ask this, I know we have a lot of people who are really trying to get familiar with the ecosystem of service mesh, but I'm very sure some of us have worked with this in production. We have worked with it even maybe in our dev environment. You can just chip in. For those who have deployed this it could be like in your dev environment, your testing environment. Do you mind you just indicating hey, I've played around with this, I've played around with it in our dev environment, in our staging environment. We've tested this out. I know we've worked with it. We've actually deployed it. We've done that. So I'm one of those people. So if you have experience in the dev testing environment, it could be on your local machine. You've actually played with it. You have actually tested this out. Do you mind just indicating, just signifying to the room, like, if you don't mind?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, cool. My name is Phil May. I work for Motorola Solutions here in Chicago. I use Kubernetes. We've been using it for a little while. We're trying to do, I'm part of our data engineering team, and we support the data scientists, basically ETL type work, operationalizing the algorithms they come up with. And we've been using Kubernetes for a while, but our whole approach to coordinating the services has been really sort of ad hoc, to say the best about it. The nicest thing I can say about it. And so we looked into Istio a little bit. We had an intern last summer, and he started fiddling around with it, but he had to leave before he got anywhere with it. And so we have something like partially done on one of our clusters, but I'd like to see a little bit more about it. So.
Thank you very much, Phil.
Mm-hmm.
That's very helpful. During the presentation, we would like people to jump in and just share your experience, because I believe the reason why most of us are here is to be able to get a sense of how the best practices from others' perspective. There's a difference between reading something and actually learning from those who have deployed it. Maybe it's even in a testing environment. Getting that experience, people can benefit from you. People can learn from you. People can avoid that mistake just by listening to you. So please share your experience. Please.
Awesome. I think we're right about the time to start. So just to start up again, I've been throwing this out there since we came online. Asking everyone to kind of like introduce themselves, like a quick introduction, and kind of share why they're actually tuning in today or joining this Zoom to actually learn about Istio and traffic mesh. One thing is, I would like to know, prior to today, who has used Istio, or who would like to share something about, or why they're here to learn about traffic mesh or Istio in particular today. So feel free to unmute yourself and just briefly. No one?
Come on, there has to be somebody.
Well, I can introduce myself. My name is Sriram. I'm with SkewChain, a blockchain startup, and we've been looking at using Istio as a sidecar to help us with things like access and maybe also Jaeger-like tracing.
Awesome. Any other person, one last one?
Hi guys. My name is Yaroslav.
Hi.
Yes. So I was working previously on a company, bol.com. It's an online retailer in Holland. We're quite a big company, and we were looking into Istio. After it was released as 1.0, so basically half a year ago. And what we are facing is that actually, also all these tutorials which are available on Istio website, they definitely work. But when it comes to applying Istio to real production use cases, where we have existing systems and we cannot afford ourselves to modify them, and we want to preserve behavior as is, Istio didn't work for us. And mostly because of we didn't need just one particular feature of Istio. We wanted, for example, to have full security, like mutual TLS, airbag everywhere, both service-to-service airbag policies and user-to-service airbag policies with custom JWT tokens. We wanted to have environment where every team has, sorry, I have to move, where every team has, just give me 1 second. Yeah, so we wanted to have like environment where every team has its own space and can configure the Istio policies independently. But because of Istio model, at least in release 1.0, it's global. So essentially, whenever somebody inside Istio mesh defines a policy, it affects everyone within this mesh. And it doesn't actually works well for multi-tenant cluster because people start interfering with each other policies. And in particular, egress traffic, when you configure traffic from inside Istio mesh to outside, some configuration options, they're mutually exclusive. And if in one namespace you configured connectivity, for example, to Google APIs in one way, and in different namespace you configured in different way, they will clash, and at least one application will not work. So in conclusion, actually, we try to use Istio from day one, after it was released 1.0, but it wasn't ready from our perspective to be used in production.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you. See, this is kind of like a lot of what you mentioned is kind of like the reason why we're actually having this meetup today, and also asking for a lot of like involvement from everyone, because your use case and your background and how, you know, some of your experiences while using Istio is quite different from how, you know, it affected me or how it affected Tunde and every other person in here. So I would like for us all to actually share all this background while, you know, while we're talking more extensively as we get along during this meetup. But let me just dive into this. So we all know the gist today is to talk about Istio as a service mesh. And if you're just joining us for the first time, we've been doing this for a long time, you know, on site and also mostly online. You know, our last presentation was on Knative, which is a serverless tool. We did that year on site in Dallas and Plano. So, you know, thank you all for joining us today. And, you know, I'm really excited about, you know, learning and sharing what I have on Istio with you all. So quick background about myself, you know, for those who are just joining. I worked as a DevOps engineer with IBM and also, you know, like working with Kubernetes, and now I'm working with VMware, working with, you know, in the cloud native business unit there. So dealing with, you know, Kubernetes and the likes of, you know, the CNCF tools and cloud native applications that we have. So Istio. This is like a really interesting tweet that Tunde put on the page saying that, you know, we all jumped on from monoliths to microservices, and so that every outage could be more like a murder mystery. But then, you know, going to what service mesh is, right? So why do we, what does service mesh mean? You know, it's a term we use to describe network services that that make up an application and the interaction between those services. When do we start to need, you know, a service mesh or like a tool that does like service mesh is a thing that is quite debatable. But from my experience, a lot of people that are using service mesh right now is just using service mesh and tools like Istio and Linkerd because it's just one of those tools out there, but not actually having exact requirements for actually using it. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Currently, right now, there are two production-ready service mesh out there, which is Istio and Linkerd. But today we're talking about Istio, and Istio was first introduced in 2007. and it was worked on by Google, IBM, and also Lyft. So the whole aim of Istio is to actually reduce complexity of deploying distributed applications. You know, it comes with a lot of capabilities, you know, that allows mutual TLS, you know, allows you to do security, traffic management, and provides observability. Yes, 2017. Yeah, 2017, May 2017 specifically. I see a question of someone asking if this was 2017. Yes. That was when Istio was introduced. So to kind of like make Istio more clear, like, you know, my initial definition by saying that it's a network of services that make up an application. So think about it as like a service mesh can be like a dedicated infrastructure for handling service to service within Kubernetes. And the whole aim, like if we go back to the previous tweet that talked about, you know, when people start moving from monoliths to microservices, and as we grow more microservices, you know, when we have like 10, 20, 30, 50, 60, 70, we get to the hundreds microservices in our environment, it becomes very, very, very difficult to manage these microservices. And what do I mean by manage? You know, getting that visibility and seeing how like each application actually links to the other application, you know, seeing how what is actually communicating with which other application, or doing troubleshooting applications when things break. You know, imagine having 200 services in your environment and something breaks, and then you have to go into your cluster and find out what actually caused that to break. It's like it's a bad night when something like that happens without having a tool that actually provides that visibility to you. So let me just track back a little bit and kind of like make it clear that traffic mesh is way different from tools like Prometheus, that is monitoring tools. Traffic mesh comes with a lot of things, right? So there's the visibility aspect, and that visibility aspect is something that comes in with Prometheus that is integrated into, that comes with traffic mesh. So traffic mesh does other things like, you know, traffic management. And how does it do this traffic management? It leverages a tool called Envoy. So it's a proxy that runs along with, I think I'm running ahead of myself here. I think I already mentioned all this. I think, I have a bug on my slide. But as I was mentioning, so traffic mesh on its own, you know, it does traffic management. You know, you can do security and observability. But let's go to the traffic management part, right? So how does it do all this? It leverages something, Envoy proxy, and uses that. Each Envoy proxy is injected into an application that is running, in this case, in the Kubernetes cluster. And one thing I just wanted to mention, you know, before going further in this, is that Istio is platform agnostic. So it doesn't only run on Kubernetes, it runs on, you know, Mesos and the likes of other orchestration tools out there. So that's not the only, this is not specific to Kubernetes. So with Envoy running as a sidecar in the pods, now we have the ability to actually intercept each communication to each application within our cluster. So what do I mean by a sidecar? A sidecar is like a little, it's like a sister container or that you can use to assist your existing application. So basically think about it as something you run along to actually do things like fault injection, or to kind of like enable certain features for your application without actually modifying the code that is used to define what your application is doing. So traffic management with the traffic management part, and with the help of Envoy, you know, we're able to do like automatic load balancing for HTTP gRPC, and TCP. So Envoy actually makes the traffic management part very, and visibility part very powerful here. A lot of other things that Istio comes in, which is it gives us fine-grained control of traffic behavior. We can do traffic encryption. We can have in-depth telemetry and reporting, and also you can do a cluster-wide policy enforcement with some of the other control plane features of Istio. Istio is very like right now to install Istio. From my own perspective is that the installation procedure for Istio is quite quirky. I mean, in the sense that it's like they're all CRDs, and CRDs are custom resource definitions. So custom resource definitions in Kubernetes is a way of extending the Kubernetes API. So Istio is like a CRD. So basically being used to extend Kubernetes API in this case. So like a lot of features of Istio right now is still like in the beta phase or alpha phase. A couple of them are in stable phase. So Istio is not something we all want to jump into right now. Some key capabilities of service mesh or Istio in this case is automatic load balancing for HTTP and the fine-grained traffic and all that I had mentioned earlier. But one thing I really wanted to stop and mention before going further is like with Istio right now, I personally question like why we actually need to use Istio, and I'm introducing something way earlier than I should be. Is when does it become a need to actually use Istio? Like, when does it become necessary to have Istio running in your environment? And then right now, is Istio stable enough for you to be using in your environment? So just think about that, like as we go on, and we'll kind of get back to that. But I want Tunde to kind of like make touch upon the control plane feature of Istio and the data plane. So let me go ahead and get to that. I'm going to kind of give control to Tunde right now to kind of talk about that.
All right, thank you very much. So I'm going to be introducing the control plane of this guy called Istio. Oh, sorry, I said this tool called Istio. All right, so Istio. What are the components? What is the architecture? Now, this part is very important. Let me share my screen for those. All right, am I able to share my screen? Wait. I'm trying to share my screen right now, but it seems yes, desktop 2. That's exactly what I want. Yes. All right. Can you see my screen? All right. Oh, are you? That's not what I want. Present. All right. Let's talk about the architecture of Istio, right? We've talked about the key capability of Istio. Let's talk about the architecture. What is Istio made up of? What are the components working together in Istio to deliver these functionalities? Now, my co-presenter already talked about Envoy, but Envoy is the brain or is the worker. Think of Envoy as the worker. We have a couple of components that tells Envoy what to do, that understands Envoy, that can talk to Envoy. What are those components, right? Now, as you can see here, we have the data plane, then we have the control plane. Those are the two subcategory of Istio, the data plane and the control plane. Now, the data plane is where the workers, the real workers, people that do what needs to happen, this is where they exist. Think of the control plane as think of it as a company, the management, people that send out instruction, people that keep the network, people, the brain, and think of this as the worker. Now, if you have an Istio deployment, the most complex part of your deployment is the Envoy, because Envoy is the most complex tool in your architecture. That was why I completely agree with the statement Tunde made regarding the fact that don't just bring Istio into your environment without understanding these components. If you do, you are in for a lot of surprises, right? What are the data plane? The data plane is made up of two main parts, the Envoy and the mixer. Envoy and the mixer. I mean, Envoy, some of us are familiar with it, some of us are not. It's a proxy. It's a very smart proxy. It's a proxy that you can talk to. It's a proxy that you can define certain protocols, certain control, and it understands what needs to be done. Right. Now, it's a proxy that can mediate traffic. So when communication is happening, that can intercept it and look at the properties of that communication. Now, Envoy, anytime there's a communication between services, for example, let's say you have a deployment, you have your Redis service, you have your Nginx service for some reason, your Nginx service needs to talk to your Redis service. The communication in between those two components, right? Envoy has the ability to look into that communication and extract information from it. Stop that communication. Authorize that communication, right? It's like the chief worker. Think of it as an ant colony. We have the queen, then we have the workers, right? So this is the worker in this colony, and this worker needs instruction. You tell it what to do, it does it. It looks at communication taking place, extract properties from it, make sense of those properties. That's Envoy. Envoy is the worker that is going to be doing most of what you are trying to use Istio for. We have other functionalities that Envoy is not responsible for. Yes, we have other functionality that Envoy is not responsible for. Now, the question is going to be, what are those functionalities? Now, the first one is, today mentioned the fact that there's a part of Istio that presents you with metrics. I already talked about the fact that Envoy just controls traffic, controls traffic flow, those kind of things. It doesn't collect metric. Which part of our infrastructure collects metric? That's the mixer. Remember, I mentioned the fact that Envoy collects little bit of information from traffic flow. So let's say your Redis service and your Nginx service are talking. The communication, within the communication, there are attributes like the response code from Redis to Nginx, attributes like the source of IP address, attributes like the header size, attributes like labels. Those kind of information, Envoy sniffs them from the traffic flow and presents them to Mixer. Mixer, you can think of Mixer as the telemetry hub, or, well, just to make it simple, because I really don't like all these keywords. It's just a guy that's it's just a tool in a component, or a person in your organization that a reservoir for metric or a reservoir for attributes. Some people call it attribute processing center of the Istio component. That means all these attributes that's been collected, it's the processing center. Now, based on those attributes that is being received, it then invokes what we call adapter. Remember, we talked about the fact that Mixer collects attributes, and those attributes can be presented to you as metrics. Now, the next question you need to ask yourself is, how is Mixer presenting with metrics? Does he have some graphing interface? Does he have some Prometheus exporter or something? No, it has a concept called adapter. So based on the attributes and based on configuration, when it receives those attributes, it calls the right adapter. Example of an adapter is Prometheus, right? That is how Mixer achieve the telemetry purpose, why it is in the Kubernetes cluster. It takes those attributes, makes sense of them, and call the right adapter, right? And also, one of the adapter could be something that checks if the header size is this, block the traffic. That could be an adapter. In this case, that could be like an adapter. So based on that, anytime Envoy snips a property from it service-to-service connection, it presents them to Mixer, and Mixer makes sense of them, and Envoy waits for response from the Mixer. So you can see how these two components interact with each other. Now, this is the boring part of the whole architecture. Envoy is very boring. It's a very complex tool. For those who are trying to get Istio to production, please and please and please and please go and read Envoy documentation. Don't just stick with Istio documentation, and you'll be in it for a lot of surprises. Envoy it's the best proxy tool. I mean, at least L7, like a proxy tool that is out there. Please and please read the documentation. This meeting is to introduce us to this component. It's not a deep dive. But for you to run this in production, you need a deep dive. You need to know when Envoy fails, when it succeeds, why it fails, why it succeeds, why it's green, why it's red, why it's blue, before you can deploy this, before you should deploy this into production. All right, the control plane. The control plane is made up of 3 components, but trust me, 2 of those components are very, very boring components. What is the galley? All right, the galley is very, very simple. The galley is simply part of the control plane that validates configuration. Remember, think of your Kubernetes cluster. When you submit your object, for those who are from Kubernetes background, when you submit your manifest, that manifest can either get rejected or accepted. Now, the same part in Istio that does that is the galley. That's why I call it the validator. The next part is the citadel, or if I'm pronouncing it right, think of it as the security interface of the control plane. Things like TLS, secure communication. That security aspect is being handled by the citadel. But the most important part, or to me, the most interesting part, is the pilot. I'll call the pilot the brain of the whole thing. The guy that, keep using that word, the tool that actually handles what is going on in the cluster, what is happening to Envoy. Envoy by itself cannot do anything. It doesn't know what to do. It doesn't have all the information it needs to make intelligent decisions. How does it get that information? It's very easy. The pilot. Think of the pilot. When you see the pilot, think of the driver, the plane, the plane, just think of the pilot, the plane pilot. It's a configuration ingestion. It ingests the configuration. It grabs topology from the service backend. It presents those information to your Envoy. The Envoy uses that information to make intelligent decisions. Remember, Envoy needs things like load balancing. Envoy does things like load balancing. How does it know where to send traffic? How does it know which instance needs to be relief of traffic? Which one needs more traffic? Which one can handle more traffic? Those information are being pulled by the pilot from your service discovery backend, pull into something that Istio can make sense of, and Istio uses that to actually undo traffic control. make sense of what it's trying to do. So that's the pilot. All right, the pilot. Now, I mentioned the fact that the pilot itself ingests a couple of objects. What are some of those objects that it ingests? One of them is the virtual service, gateway. Just like Tunde said earlier, these are CRDs, custom resource definitions. But this custom resource definition actually makes sense within the cluster. They are instruction on how to do some stuff. And those instructions are being converted by pilots, and pilots convert them into a language that Envoy can actually make sense of. For those who are interested in this kind of, who are interested in deep dive on pilots, I'm going to post a link on our chat room, on our Slack group, so that you can actually go and listen to the architecture from the core developers. So that's, this is the control plane. Does anyone have any question? I know I've been talking for a while.
So today, I personally do have a question at this point, but could you please release the hold so people that are trying to get in can get in?
Oh, sorry about that. That's, oh. Been holding people. All right, so, all right, let me just quickly fix that. It's interesting. All right, people trying to get in. I'm just going to make Tunde the admin. Tunde. All right.
But while Tunde is trying to get that done, right now, so far, does anyone have any question?
Does anyone have any question?
Yeah, I had a quick one. I think just to test my understanding, the these CRDs that you were talking about, when you push objects of that type, the pilot is the one that basically takes that information and drives the Envoy based on your basically how you want that thing configured, plus system parameters that it's collecting. Is that correct?
Thank you very much. That's basically the pilot does exactly what you talked about. Take those CRD, it understands them and converts them to something like Envoy can understand. Yes.
Tunde, can you please run that question again?
All right. The question that he asked of, if I understand you correctly, please correct. Okay. So the question was, right, he was asking about those CRD I was talking about. For those who are not from Kubernetes, from those who are not from Kubernetes background, the CRD is simply, how do I explain it for those outside Kubernetes?
It's sort of an Kubernetes extension. Yeah, is a good way to say it.
Thank you. It's a Kubernetes extension, like a way to define your own thing, right? So once you define, so in Istio, define their own thing. They call it, it's a kind of CRD. We have the virtual service CRD, we have the gateway service CRD. Now, when you define those CRD and you apply them to your Istio deployment, those things are being processed by the pilots.
So just to add a little bit on CRD, just to clarify what CRDs are. In Kubernetes, we have like two ways of actually extending the Kubernetes API right now. It's either using aggregated APIs or using custom resource definitions. Custom resource definitions, which is CRDs. CRD stands for custom resource definition. It's more of the easier way to actually extend the Kubernetes API by just writing using YAML declaration or JSON declarations. So this is something you can do on an existing Kubernetes API. So you can write a CRD and leverage that as opposed to extend your Kubernetes API. So an example of what you use a CRD for is right now, some of the resources you would have on an existing Kubernetes cluster is pods, deployments, and the likes of that. But if you had a use case whereby you would like to run a command like kubectl get VMs or get network, which are like resources that are done native to Kubernetes, or kubectl get names, just get foods. Let's say you have a resource you would like to call food, or maybe you're a company specializing in food and you would like to create a resource called food. This is where things like CRDs come in, where you create your own custom resource. I hope that helped.
I'm going to show you an example, but I would like to hang on one word that today used, which is CRD. CRD actually, the word food, right? A company that makes food, right? They define a CRD food, and they have a way to make sense of it. So that food example that today gave, in this case, Istio developer defined another kind of food called virtual gateway, and virtual service and gateway. So those virtual service, those gateway, they make sense to Istio, and the pilot processes them. I can share a link to CRD for those who are interested in learning more about CRD. I can post a link on our Slack room. And
so Tunde, real quick, there's a question from Jonathan that says, if pilots failing causes an Envoy proxy to fail, how do we ensure high availability? As I understand, pilot runs as a single pod.
Right. Okay. All right. So that's a very good question, right? So I mean, when I deployed my my Istio deployments, my environment, my pilot is a deployment in my cluster. You can increase number of pilots in your environment. It's advisable depending on the size of your cluster. You can increase number of ports, pilot ports running in your Kubernetes cluster to make it more highly available. So the number of pilots that you run in your environment depends on the size of your cluster. For my use case, one was okay, but I tested with running multiple pilots in my environment. So you can actually run multiple of those ports to actually undo things like high availability. In case one port goes down, the other one takes over the responsibility. Or you have something that exists that takes over the responsibility. And mind you also, if your pilot fails, Envoy also caches instruction from pilot, right? So your Envoy proxy are not going to be able to get updated instruction from the pilot, but at least for some time, they should be functioning. That's what I noticed in the cluster. The instruction that's already been out has been delivered to them. Envoy caches those instructions. Now, when I noticed my Envoy started failing for after about, I think 5 minutes after I removed the pilot, because I was playing around them in a kind of test environment. It started failing like 5 minutes after I removed the pilot. The pilot is an essential part, but Envoy employs other strategies like caching so that those instructions that you already passed in are still maintained by Envoy, even without a pilot. But I noticed that failure after 5 minutes. That was my personal experience with Istio.
I think this case might be like might be one of those things that might be specific to, you know, your experience with Istio, right? So, you know, if you've worked extensively with Istio, or like, you know, which you're during your Istio use case, you run into something like this, please feel free to unmute yourself and kind of share with the team. You know, like I said earlier, everyone should please feel free to unmute themselves, ask questions, and contribute to this.
Yeah, please join in. Just tell us, what was your experience with Pilot? Was it stable throughout your deployment, or did you see some flakiness in your deployment? Most of my issue was with Galley. That was where I had a lot of issue. It kept crashing for some reason, right? That was my experience when I was, deploying the sending traffic, trying to like load test it with traffic, but the Galley kept crashing. But my Pilot was very, very stable. But I removed it, and after 5 minutes, I saw that I was having problem. I was getting a lot of like failure logs in my cluster. So please unmute yourself and share your experience with this component.
I think we can come back to this in a minute.
All right. So let's talk about, all right, the gateway and the virtual service. Remember, right, we talked about those CRDs that your pilots ingest, right? Those CRD, these are some of the examples. Now, for those who are not familiar with Istio, the question is going to be, what does a gateway mean? What is a virtual service? What does it mean? So let's try to make sense of this. Now, in your Istio deployment, the first thing you are going to notice is what we call the ingress gateway. Think of ingress gateway as a special kind of service that has a deployment behind it. For those in Kubernetes, a service that has a deployment behind it. Now that service is of type load balancer, your ingress gateway. For you to actually make sense of this gateway and virtual service, we need to understand the ingress gateway. The ingress gateway receives traffic from your load balancer, right? Now the next question, after it receives traffic from your load balancer, how does it make sense of those traffic? How do you tell it how to handle those traffic? You use what we call your gateway to tell it how to handle traffic. What I'm saying is I'm trying to handle traffic that is coming from this particular host, right? Where the host header is this, and also going to this port or coming to port 80. That is what you are actually saying in this case, that you're trying to handle traffic with this particular host coming to port 80. So gateway is a way to tell your ingress gateway what you're trying to undo. Now, I'm selecting the name of my ingress gateway using the selector. Oh, sure. Oh, sorry about that. I'm selecting my ingress gateway that this is going to be applied to based on this selector. What does that mean? That means Istio, you can deploy multiple ingress gateway. And you can define your gateway depending on which ingress gateway you want this particular gateway to apply to. Please don't get confused. The gateway is the one that receives the traffic from your external load balancer. For those who are on GCP or those on AWS, your ELB is on the outside of the application. Once it receives that traffic, it sends it to your ingress gateway. How does your ingress gateway make sense of those traffic? That is what gateway and virtual service does. The gateway tells what you're trying to undo. Now, after you tell what kind of traffic you're trying to undo, how do you actually undo them? How do you actually modify them? How do you actually control them? This is what your virtual service does. It provides the logic that you want to apply to this gateway. All right, the host is those traffic with this particular host header coming through port 80, how do I handle them? What I'm simply saying is, okay, to handle them, I'm going to define a virtual service. That virtual service is going to bind to this gateway. And what it's going to do is, for those traffic that has a prefix of status or delay, send them to this particular destination. So it's like, this tells you what you're trying to undo. This tells you the logic of how to undo it. That is a gateway, that is a virtual gateway. Does anyone have any question? So just to analyze this, think of gateway as, how do I say this? So you have multiple, okay, this is probably going to be a very bad example though. So you have multiple lanes, right? So gateway, right, allows you to select which lane you're trying to handle. All right, yeah, this is a very bad example. I'm still going to go ahead. So you have multiple lanes. Gateway allows to select which lane you are trying to be in charge of, you are trying to handle. Now, after you select those lanes, the logic behind handling those lanes is where virtual service comes in. In this case, it's simply saying, if the prefix says status, I need you to simply do something for me. Route it to this destination. So the virtual service defines the logic behind your gateway. Does anyone have any question?
I think it'd be nice to mention that, you know, when using virtual services also, you know, under the HTTP section, you can specify something like route that allows you to kind of like split traffic between, you know, for the destinations you would like your traffic to go to. So there's something like you specifying route, then you specify the destination, then you do like a weight, you specify the weight of traffic you want to go to a specific service, and you know, another maybe a fraction of that traffic also going to another service. And then you can specify things like timeout for fault injection and the likes of it.
Yes, yep, yes. All those happen in the virtual service. Now, this is a very simple example. The goal of this example is to introduce you to what virtual service is. But I know most of us are attracted to Istio by the promise of traffic shaping, traffic control. Where does that happen? Where does that traffic control happen? It happens through virtual service. Traffic control that Tunde talked about, you've been able to do things like, you know, A/B testing, canary deployment, right? Like doing kind of weight-based routing. All those take place through virtual service. Now, we have a lot of examples online of people who have done this that can actually guide you. But if you have any question, please reach out to the community. I've actually done this, and I can also chip in on, you know, maybe something is missing or so. But for traffic shaping or traffic handling, weight-based routing, you know, version routing, being able to route this percentage of your traffic to this version of your application and the other percentage to another version of your application, all those take place through your virtual service. So this is one of the most powerful components of Istio. If you want to get the full power of it, go through the documentation. You will see examples of whatever you're trying to do.
So Tunde, so real quick, a couple of questions. So first question from, okay, the first question here is this an abstraction so you don't have to tell the ELB where to go to, but just send it to the gateway?
Yes, so this, in my case, right, in this, I didn't have to define my rules on the ELB. I don't do that. On the ALB or any kind of load balancer you're using, I define the rules of the routing through virtual service. All the traffic comes in through one big giant hallway. But I use the virtual service, I use the gateway to select which of them I care about, and I use the virtual service to define the logic of how those I care about will be handled. I didn't have to do anything on the ELB level. Yes.
Awesome. So another question there is, so is this an enhanced, more powerful alternative to ingress controller?
Yes. All right. So when this person said ingress controller, I'm going to assume you're talking about Nginx ingress controller. We have other like Contour, but I'm going to use Nginx for example. Right now, Nginx has things like Nginx is trying to do things like canary deployment, but this is a more native way, a more powerful way to achieve that. It's more potent than your ingress controller. Right, you cannot do things like weight-based routing on your ingress controller. Well, Nginx has ability to allow you to do things like canary deployment, but not with these things like timeout, retries, those kind of functionality. Nginx cannot do that. That is where the power of Istio comes in.
Yeah, and to add to that one, also say one from my experience. One is also with Nginx, you have limitations in terms of the kind of regex you can specify for host names. So with Istio, it's much easier. So you can specify something like a.b.google.com, but with Nginx, it's more or less star.google.com kind of like mechanism there. So there's a limitation when you're trying to specify host name entries like that for your HTTP destinations, your route destinations. So that is one from my end. So there's another question today that says, in virtual service similar to is virtual service similar to an application load balancer in AWS? I think you already answered this, right?
Yeah, I already talked about it. Let me just chip in a little bit. Yes, it's very similar, right? Very similar, but this is the bigger advantage. Let me ask you this question: you are in production, you want to control your traffic, right? The flexibility that your ALB provides you is not as powerful as what virtual service provides you. Right now, ALB provides you with host-based routing, path-based routing. This provides more than that. It provides things like timeout, retry, weight-based routing. All those kind of possibility. And just like Tunde mentioned earlier, it doesn't just provide that. It tells you what is going on. It provides you with the metric alongside with it. So if you define your rules on AWS ALB right now, I don't really know what's going on the back end without having to look at logs, look at this, look at that. But this one expose them through Mixer, and you can expose them to Prometheus. So those kind of metrics, those details level of control is what virtual service provide over ALB.
So virtual service is kind of like a rule-based control plane for like routing your services using Istio. So I think that's pretty much the best way I can go about it.
All right. Can someone also chip in on how they've used gateway and virtual service in production? Can someone, if you've used this in production, just, how have you used it? What did you use it for? Did you use it for your website? Or did you use it for your database? Or what did you use it for? And how did it perform? You can just unmute yourself. trying to get more people to like, engage in this conversation. All right. So since we don't have anybody, I'm going to continue. All right. Let's talk about this guy. Keep using. Let's talk about this part of discussion. So this is the main part of. This is the most important part of this meeting to me, because you can know virtual service, you can know gateway, but just like someone said in the beginning of the meeting, how do you use this in production? How do you deploy this in production? How do you make sense of this in production? So I would like us to open the floor with people. What are your experiences with Istio in different environments? It doesn't have to be production. In dev, in UAT, any kind of like staging environment. It could be on your local machine. What was your experience like? What were your troubles? What were your your joy? What were your like surprises? Please chip in, and because we are opening this for discussion right now. Let me stop sharing.
So I can start if if no one else is ready. But with my experience on it, like I mentioned earlier, one thing is, when do you start to need Istio, right? When do you start to need Istio in your environment? Istio is a beast on its own. It's like, it extends the Kubernetes API to a next level. You've seen how powerful Istio is in tools like Knative, and AWS also leveraged Istio in Istio or Envoy, and then the Envoy part of it is also leveraged in, I think, Fargate. So there's just so much to Istio itself that actually adds like another layer of complexity and a lot of power to Istio, the tool itself. But now, if you look at Istio and since it came out, and if you've been tracking the project itself, there's a lot of, first things first, let's look at how many stable features there are in Istio. Very, very few in comparison to, maybe Linkerd. And I haven't also had like a lot of success stories using Istio, because like if you look at the custom resource definitions and how much code there is or how many lines of YAML code there is in the Istio deployments itself, it's like it's a headache. And so there's like a lot of moving parts to Istio itself that if you break one thing, it on the long run, like it really tears down your whole and makes it really difficult for you to troubleshoot. Like a personal experience of mine was, I had like a cluster that I was running in a CI/CD pipeline on, and I installed Istio, and in less than 24 hours, and this was like the early phases of Istio, and my whole cluster was like completely broken. And there was, and I had like little knowledge on how Istio worked, but because, like I said, a lot of people have been using Istio like in the community, because it's just that new tool that can do so many things. You can do rule-based routing. You can enforce policies and security and to a certain level. But I got excited and I used Istio, and it broke my Kubernetes cluster, and it was really, really hard to troubleshoot that. I had to actually recreate the Kubernetes cluster. But my case is, my thing right now is, I've realized that Istio is something you tend to use more when you actually have a need for the feature and you have a very, very good understanding of it. And then like for instance, maybe you want to leverage the security aspect of Istio on itself and couple it with your existing infrastructure securities or network policies. Istio comes in very, very handy in those cases. But you just need to be careful with using Istio in your environment, because Like the fact that you have Envoy injected into every single container, it means that, if something goes wrong in Istio, it potentially affects every single pod, every single application running in your environment. So it's like, to me, it's kind of like another single point of failure. So something goes wrong, everything is bad within your cluster. Um, so I mean, that's like from my own experience with using Istio. Like I said, I haven't really seen a lot of people like use Istio for the right reasons, except if you have like thousands of pods, or in your environment, or like you're scaling into like maybe 200 nodes and you're trying to see everything running in there. But it'd be very, very nice and interesting to actually get people to kind of talk about the challenges they faced while running Istio, or why they stopped using Istio and moved to a different traffic mesh. It'd be really nice to get that perspective.
So I have some experience working with Ambassador and Istio and Envoy, and it was a financial services application. And so, and I think this is some of the debate that exists right now, which is kind of roll your own service mesh versus, let's just say, Chinese banquet offered, cloud native service mesh, which is, AWS, and I'd say maybe sort of Azure. I haven't been able to figure that one out really fully. But we could say at least AWS, and some, specialist stuff that I'm not maybe familiar with, like boutique solutions. But my experience with rolling your own was, it's like rolling your own in anything. I remember doing that with VMware 15 years ago. I mean, it's just, it's you're embracing the world of pain of being a 0.1 real world production kind of, party. The one thing I would say is that when you're looking at existing highly regulated native applications that need to move for practical competitive reasons, digitizing, this whole digital transformation, and I have another customer I worked with for a long time, Cigna. I used to work at Cognizant for a long time, like 15 years, so I don't work there anymore. I work at another company called Softtech, the Mexican version of the Indian outsourcers, basically. Closer, less travel, usual stuff, newer idea. So I had a bunch of big healthcare clients, and they're never gonna roll their absolutely critical strategic gateways and claim processors and all those pieces onto the cloud, onto public cloud. It's not pragmatic. And I don't know, maybe by 5.0 of AWS Outpost or whatever, when it's basically, VMware Cisco 10.0, they'll probably do a hybrid cloud like that. But in the real world, it's going to be an on-prem, OpenShift type architecture. And so leveraging these endpoint API-driven, mesh-based, decentralized architectures is really hard. I mean, there just isn't a lot of traditional off-the-shelf prem-based solutions for that. So to me, this is kind of one of those package use cases that could be very applicable. And so, so my experience is it's hard, but I think the alternative is what? You're going to go back to JMS messaging and a bunch of lame, basically fake microservices that are really just smaller SOA, that's just rebranded in the CTO deck to make everyone look like they're doing digital. I mean, it's like, I don't see how you transition to these type of architectures in those very complex industries without rolling your own. And let's be honest, this compared to trying to roll out WebSphere to 500 servers, or I did, WebLogic back in the day with big Java apps, I mean, this is easy compared to that world. So I think it's just, I think the problem is we're used to, we got to play so long on this cloud that's so deconstructed that when we have to go back to something that you're rolling your own, we're sitting there and like, oh, you know, like I got to start up all these processes. I mean, you know, so it's almost like we're going backwards a little based on our experiences on the cloud. And I think we're playing a game with our heads by trying to compare the two. It's almost like you have to treat cloud native as cloud native, public cloud. That's a different animal. You know, I started in this almost 25 years ago when mainframe was still mainframe. No one was like, oh yeah, on the mainframe I can do this, so on AIX I can do that. I mean, no one said it like that ever, because you would never speak like that, or AS400 or whatever. But people kind of communicate that way about the cloud versus the non-cloud. I think we almost have to treat it as the non-cloud is the mainframe now, or AS400, or, you know, heavy systems. And the cloud is the new stuff. And you know, what you can do in both is awesome, and that's great when you can, but, you know, we shouldn't be judging both by the same, you know, kind of construct. Anyways, I kind of went off the deep end there. Sorry.
That was good. I really like that. I really like that. I really like that. It offers like a different perspective actually. Because I didn't really think it that way, because some of the questions I was asked showed like people that are coming from this background and being thrown into things like a different kind of ecosystem. And of course, the only knowledge that you have is those that you learn from AWS and stuff like that. So you try to make comparison. So I've not thought about it like that. Thanks.
Sure.
All right. Does anyone else have something to chip in about Istio? Why they think we should adopt Istio? Why they think Istio is the thumb down or it's a thumb up? Some people think it's a thumb down. It's perfectly logical. So yeah. So if you have any kind of a perspective to share, please let us know.
I mean, an argument in my own opinion, and like I said, in my own opinion, is that Istio is not production ready. I mean, you know, if I have majority of my in my software, majority of the features not stable, I would definitely say that it's not production ready. And you know, if you look at the issues on GitHub also right now, it's like there's a lot of open issues with Istio, and so you know that's one thing you might want to put into case. But one thing is, I don't want this to look like I said we're bashing Istio.
Yeah.
I see a lot of benefits in actually using Istio, but I'm saying my biggest question now is, when is it right to use Istio? When is a good time to use Istio? And you know, how do you manage, like, you know, all these moving parts that Istio has to it?
I mean, this is just my take, is that if your choice right now is to go and relicense Software AG or Oracle or IBM, which obviously has stability, but you know is absolutely a dead-end architecture, you know, that's the crossroad. And let's say you have to deploy some degree of hybrid, and it's also a skill set issue. Right. I mean, good luck finding anyone under 30 or 35 that wants to learn anything from Software AG or IBM or whatever. So you're then going to carry two teams. So it's a question of, is it worth SREing Istio and Envoy and Ambassador, you know, your own API data and data planes and so on, or, you know, maintaining, you know, kind of two lock-in platforms. one that's cloud native and then one that's legacy. And then, you know, how do you, in the real world, I mean, it's the business engineering that fails at that point, right? Because you don't have, I mean, it's an ugly choice, but it's the choice you have right now, which is, do you want to be able to punt because you can blame IBM Software AG on the legacy side, and you can blame AWS or Azure on the cloud native side and say, it's just not fast. They don't work well together. Not me. Or do you roll your own and have to SRE this? And then sure, that they're, you know, it's the real world. You're going to get blasted. It's just how it happens. You're going to get blasted no matter what happens. So then the question is, are you getting blasted while you're taking SRE improvements, and this becomes a real value engineering exercise in your organization? Because the truth is, you cannot SRE these legacy architectures very well. You just can't. I mean, you try, you kill yourself. It just doesn't. They don't lend themselves to it. You know, you don't control the air and quality and the build cycles behind them. I mean, you're just, you know, every time you do something that finally hardens it, you know, something else happens on their end. You have to sit back and wait 6 months for a patch. So to me, that's the choice. I don't know if that is too argumentative. Sorry if it is.
Yes, it is. It is. My experience was for our kind of deployment, right? We had to pull Istio because of, it's like bringing out a, you know, like bringing out a nuke.
Yeah.
When you're trying to find, just like, you know, you're trying to find someone else and you try to go get a nuke or something. Most of the functionality that we want could be provided by Nginx, right? For the scale of our deployment at a performance level, right? Now, the next question we asked ourselves is, do we truly understand Istio? Because I believe the most important critical decision to actually, to actually decide what tool to use is, can I fix this if this breaks in production? That is your number one question. If you're about to release Istio to production, can you fix it if it breaks? Do you understand Envoy to a point that if it breaks in production, you get a good idea of what is going on? And one thing, those kind of questions, right? You have to truly answer them, unless you are just setting yourself up for nightmare in production. I told you in our staging environment, right? My Istio broke and I wasn't able to fix it for like 30 minutes. That's a very bad sign. That is very, very bad. So those are kind of things that you need to consider when you're trying to adopt these tools. And also at this point, I don't believe Istio has enough resources for you to be able to go into GitHub issues and find the resolution of what you're trying to fix. The issue I was having, I had to go deep inside discussion to see. Someone just mentioned it. Somebody just mentioned it on the discussion. That was how I found out the problem. And Istio, right now in Kubernetes, almost most of what you're trying to fix can be found in GitHub issues or documentation, if you look in the right places. But Istio has not gotten to that level. That was why we did a pull on that. So that was my experience.
So I have a question. So if, so then in your last engagement or last in client environment, did they license Nginx just enterprise, so then you could just use at will, so you didn't have to price out solutions one by one? Because if you have that, then that makes sense. I mean,
we did not use that. We did not use enterprise Nginx. No.
Okay.
No, we did not use that. Just like normal Nginx.
Okay.
And it provided the right performance, but you have to tune it.
Yep.
You have to tune it right. right? So we use that instead.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the problem, right? We're all stuck in this zone where, you know, you're paying for an ingress controller that you have to then do SRE on, and then you have to SRE everything else, or you're not paying for a control plane that has, you know, let's call it above average reliability, or low good or whatever, you know, some B minus, B level. And you still have to obviously SRE it as much as you can. You know, I think that's you know, if you have a good enough leadership team that can buy Nginx Enterprise, then obviously buy it. But if they ran out of money or don't understand it or want to be cool, you know, that's hard to do.
There's a comment there's something in the comment section about Istio being in OpenShift. Can that person also like chip in? Just unmute yourself and just chip in on what you mean by, I didn't really know that Istio is going to be incorporated in future OpenShift release. What information do you have on that? Because I don't really know about that. If you can unmute yourself and just, you know, give us like a little bit information about that. Istio and OpenShift. All right, it's fine. All right, because someone said Istio is incorporated in future OpenShift release. If you pay for the license, you get better. Oh, from the sales team. Okay, all right, from the sales team. Okay. I'm really looking forward to that. All right, it said from the sales team.
Well, that brings up a good point. If the IBM deal goes through, which you know, I mean, it should. You know, it makes sense that Istio is going to get IBM hardened over time. So that then makes it even more complicated of a decision, right? Because at some point it's going to be, they're going to make it right? They're not going to have a shaky piece of service mesh out there that they're very dependent on. The question is when, you know, what's the time frame on that? A year, 2 years, you know?
All right, guys. So let's try to wrap up. We have 15 more minutes. So we have a couple of announcements that we would like to share with. We would like to share, and I would like Tunde to talk about that also. Like things that we're trying to do right here. Just like to get your input on it. Please share. This is a community. Please let us know what your input is. You know what you think about this. And we really appreciate that to improve this place. Thank you. So Tunde, do you want to like share what's going on with us? You're on mute. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. 1 second, I forgot how to operate my computer. But yeah, so like to wrap up, some of the things we're planning on is, you know, for our consequent meetups, we're planning on looking into Kind, which is an open source tool that the SIG, I think is, I've forgotten which of the SIGs, Kubernetes SIGs worked on, but Kind is kind of like a thing as like a development Kubernetes cluster that you can set up. And so it's basically Kind stands for Kubernetes in Docker. So with Kind, you're kind of spinning up a Kubernetes cluster inside of Docker, and inside of Docker, you have like each Docker runtime it is a node. So you can have multiple. So you can have a concept of master and worker nodes, unlike just running Minikube, because, you know, as we all know, Minikube is like a single node Kubernetes cluster. So you kind of get a feel of that, master worker node setup, and you can use that for integration tests. So I can share a link, after talking about this, but we plan on doing that, doing a demo on that for our next meetup. So one other thing I wanted to bring up to the group was, we're planning on doing a series like, every 2 weeks, just going through certain Kubernetes resources like initializers, pod presets, and, mutating webhooks, validation webhooks, and kind of like do a 30 minutes intro to each of those resources or features of Kubernetes. And and just wanted to know what the whole community thought about us doing that. But as far as next meetup, that's what we're planning on doing, a presentation on Kind, which is Kubernetes and Docker. So feel free to share what you think about us just kind of like doing presentation on resources in Kubernetes.
Are you going to send out the recording?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be good. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. So we are going to make the recording available after once it's going to process, once it's finished processing, make it available to everybody.
So Tilly, do you want to share some of the other things you had in mind?
Yes. The first thing is we are thinking about, some kind of local community involvement. We are thinking more, the goal of this year is more local involvement. So meet up across the US. So we are looking for people in various cities who are interested in being like an organizer for that city. For example, in I think in San Francisco, we have about 550, I remember, people. So if you want to be in charge of that, organizing the meeting, people meeting, you want to be coordinating that, is something that that you think you have time for, that you're passionate about, that you can do. It shouldn't take much of your time. It requires planning, and I believe it's a very good way to network with people. So if you're interested in that, hosting local meetup, right? For example, San Francisco, New York, Dallas. If you're interested in hosting local meetup, being in charge of the group for that community, we have people from DC here. So if you are from DC, I think we have about 300 and something people in DC. You want to be in charge of organizing local meetup, please reach out to us on Slack, or we are also going to share our email also. Reach out to us. We'd like to know more about your intention, your plans, and do you think you'll be able to do this? Really appreciate that. And also, we are looking for people who wants to present here, because we are trying to make sure this is different from other meetup in the sense that this feels more like a community of more discussion, more interaction, sharing of experience. So we want people in the community to share your experience. And please try to be involved in the meeting discussion. We'll love. This is not like a usual presentation where we have a guy presenting or somebody presenting or a lady up there just presenting. No, we want something like people can talk, can respond, we can discuss, we can share experience, we can talk about what problem you have in your environment, and people can chip in on how to resolve it. More that kind of format is what we are looking for. So if you want to present, someone that likes to present, please reach out. And the last thing I would like to share is Today and I, we have this idea of this series called, it's titled Production on Fire. It's very simple. The idea is very simple. It's like, we invite people who have had, I know we've all had production issue. I had one yesterday. So it's something that happens every day. But do we have a resource that allows us to share those kind of, the lesson learned? What was your recovery strategy? What was your aftermath plan? How did you change things? What led, to what was the root cause? What was the fix? What was the temporary temporary solution that you applied in production? Those knowledge are not available. So we think about coming out with a series called Production on Fire. Then we pick out a tool that had the issue, and the person talks about that issue, how they resolved it. So I would like what you guys think about it. Do you think it's a good idea? Do you think it's something that will benefit the community, or something that we should skip on? Please, the floor is open. We have about 5 minutes. I would really like to get people's idea on this one.
Is there going to be some type of support system to do that? Because obviously you guys have been doing this for a long time, years, I guess. So any of us that would be volunteering or joining together to volunteer, would we get, kind of, let's say, real support from you guys, just to especially the first 2 or 3 cycles of events? Because I think that's going to be key for any of us, versus just kind of, it's more like doing it CICD versus throwing it over the wall SDLC,
Yeah. Absolutely, Aaron. Your first meetup, we are going to work with you on, everything that you need, right? What you want to talk about, the topic that you want to talk about, what format you want to talk about it. It's everything. We are going to leave you in control of sharing your experience. But it's going to be like, if you need hey, how do I do this? We are going to chip in, right? You will be in absolute control of how you want things to flow. But if you need hey, how do I do this? Sudi and I available anytime.
Yeah, and also to add to that, there's a Slack channel. So feel free to join. You can reach out to me. You can reach out to Tunde also at any time. And if you have any questions about cloud native applications, or DevOps related questions, also feel free to reach out. Not only to I or Tunde. There's several people in the community that with a lot of expertise in different areas that you can reach out to. Also, feel free to share your questions there.
Where are you guys at?
We're located in Dallas, Texas.
Okay, so you guys are in Dallas. Okay. So actually my company's headquarters is in Dallas, so I'll be there next week. But so we have our cloud native guys there, so I can connect you to them. And then I'm sure you can use our offices. I'm positive we can use, because we've talked about trying to do events, meetups, things like that. So that could be just a good, and it's in Addison. So I don't know if that's too far out, far enough, but yeah, so I can connect you there. And I live in right outside of New York, so kind of in the New York area. There's a lot of events in New York. I mean, it's very vendor saturated, if that makes any sense. Which can be a little awkward even, because people are just selling a lot. I don't know if you have experience like that, but I've had that a lot of, people either come for the free food, and whatever. And then, or they're just loaded with vendor people, salespeople, that kind of thing.
I believe Tudi and I knows what you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, especially, but in New York, it's just really, it's unique. I've been to meetups in other cities, and they're just more normal, laid back, I think, in general. So people are selling a lot in New York.
All right. So I think we've come to the end of the meeting. Aaron, is it possible for us to catch up on Slack?
Sure, absolutely. I'll connect in Slack, and then I'll send you my. Or how about this? Let me see. Zoom. Do we have a channel here? Let's see a chat. Do I have a chat channel here with you here on Zoom? Let me check here.
I think the best form of communication would be over the Slack.
Okay. No, I was just. Oh, that's fine. I'll give you my. I'll email you, or I'll Slack you my my corporate email, and then connect you guys, and then we can go from there.
All right. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you all for joining today. It's been a very, it's been really great talking about Istio and traffic mesh with you all. And I'm looking forward to seeing every single person in Kubernetes and Docker presentation that will be taking place next month. We haven't actually put out a time for that, but I'm looking forward to seeing everyone. And also, feel free to, like again, I said, feel free to get more engagement in the Slack channel. Let's talk about cloud native applications. Let's talk about Kubernetes. Let's talk about best practices, So,
all right. Yeah.
Okay, see you all.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, guys. Thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you guys. That was good.
All right.
Thank you guys. It was very helpful. Thank you.
Everybody's now muting their I thought I was the only one in this place. All right. Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you guys very much for what you did. Great job.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right.